The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
If you really want to doge, this is how you doge. You don't vote for bad legislation that expands government. Thank you.
Now we're talking about taxpayer money, and we're talking about accountability. It is their money. This isn't a government program we're actually spending on. We're actually giving it back to the people of Idaho.
There's other options for making our ballots more secure, such as using watermarks or putting holograms on the ballots.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
I asked the question rhetorically, if we gave them another $1 billion, they wouldn't be happy. Well, we've given them $2 more billion, and it's not enough.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
Other states like Texas and Florida have enacted similar laws to address illegal immigration, both locally and in their communities. And Idaho has the right to protect itself when the federal government has failed to do that.
COVID presented us with quite the enigma. We didn't really know what it was or what to do, but that is no excuse to violate the rights of the citizens of the state of Idaho.
I say vote no on this and let the teachers teach and quit bringing in coaches to teach the teachers to teach, and let's get education going again in Idaho.
I don't know what's coming after this current administration for the feds, and we need this law because our federal laws on immigration have failed.
Mr. President, I think it's incumbent upon us to allow parents to use their hard-earned dollars to provide what's best for their children.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
My concern is that the resilience of Idahoans who believe in self-reliance and self-responsibility will be eroded.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Yeah, watch it.
Come on, guys.
Lock machine, those cast votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Clerk will lock machine and record the roll. 68 ayes, 2 absent, and excused, majority having voted in favor of House Bill 551. House Bill 551 has passed the House. Is there correction in title?
No correction in title.
Hearing none, the title is approved and the bill will be transmitted to the Senate. The House will now have before it House Bill 526. Good gentleman, 21.
Yeah. First time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to dispense with further reading of House Bill 526.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there objection? Hearing none, gentleman has the floor. Send the bill.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Mr.
Good
Speaker,
morning, everybody. This is
a bill to
Idaho
help
Signals
us.
on the air. Let's leave this shot up. This is Representative Jeff Ellers presenting H526. The vote you just saw before was dealing with property tax assessments, and that passed unanimously there. That was House Bill 551. We can get more details on that if we need to in a moment. But this one here deals with cottage food industries. And for folks who sell small amount of foods out there, to be able to sell them without having to set up a what are they called, like a commercial kitchen when they're selling things that deal with temperature and time. So this will allow small sellers to be able to get a start in the industry by selling their foods. So we'll keep an eye on this as we move along here and tell you the vote of how it goes. But apologies for a tad bit of a late start this morning, but that's all for good reason. This morning, we had the opportunity to connect with Congressman Russ Fulcher, District 1's congressional representative out there in Washington, D.C. There's a few things that he's been working on out there collectively as a body, and then on his own with a new caucus, and then also all by himself. And so we wanted to touch upon those few things this morning and present them to you because they're actually hot topics here in Idaho. One was the Save America Act, of course, which you've heard about voter ID and registration. The other was a new caucus he started called the Sharia Free America Caucus. And as you know, we've been following two bills here in Idaho that would make sure that Sharia law does not become a part of our court system in any fashion here. And then, of course, in Idaho, we have something on the books that says you can, when you run a bill, it can only be about one thing at one time, one subject at a time. And that is a bill that he's been presenting in Congress ever since he's been there, I believe. So we touched on all of that, and we have that interview here queued up for you. And so we're going to turn it over to that, and we'll be back right after. Let's check out this interview from just a few moments ago. Congressman Russ Fulcher joins us now, and Congressman, it's great to see you. Big news that's happening in the House this week, I believe, is the Save America Act returns to you guys, and this deals with voter ID. Are you excited about what you're going to be receiving here in the House?
I am. Actually, we've passed that through the House, believe it or not, twice, and now we're sending it to the Senate for the third time. It's difficult to comprehend why people would not want to require citizenship and an ID to vote. But basically every Democrat in the U.S. House and the Senate so far are opposing that. And so that's where we are. But this is incredibly important moving forward in terms of America's future.
Yeah, and we spoke with Secretary of State Phil McGrain here in Idaho last week. And, the election process and the election integrity in Idaho is one of the best across the country here. But when you're dealing with other states and how they run their elections, this is vitally important to the choices that Idahoans are making when they go to the polls. Can you stress how important it is for us to just have, simple voter ID when you're registering?
Well, let's put it this way. Ask yourself, why did the Democrats want the borders open for the last 4 years? And why would you flood a nation with millions, literally millions, we don't know exactly how many, somewhere in the neighborhood of 15, 20 million plus? Why would you do that? And then knowing that they would be subject to and awarded with various programs and entitlements and those types of things. Well, the reason you do that is because you want them to be able to vote. Now, with this Save America Act, it applies to federal elections. It would say, no, you need to be a citizen and you need to be able to show ID. And so, look, if you take that 20 million and you put that at an average across the country, including Idaho, how many more members of Congress does that make? How does that sway with the population to dictate where those members reside, who they represent? This could have a very significant impact. And so Idaho does have good election laws, and we want to make sure and keep it that way. We don't want to federalize elections, but at least for those federal steps and federal electees, they need to be put in place by citizens. They need to be put in place by people with an ID to prove it.
Excellent. Do you think this has any problems getting out of the House again?
No, I think we'll get it again. This will be the third time. I'm concerned about the Senate, and they failed to run with it twice. And as you know, they've got a different set of rules there. They have to get 60 in terms of the regular order. There's some possible ways to avoid that and do a simple majority, but that's not been accommodated yet. Right. So that's my biggest concern. The president has already said he'll sign it. He wants to see this into law.
Yeah, we do too. Very nice. Okay. The GOP, the Idaho State GOP recently passed a resolution regarding making sure Sharia law doesn't become part of our court system in Idaho, and very important stuff. But you debuted something recently, the Sharia Free America caucus that you're a part of here, and what? So can you explain a little bit what you're trying to do across the country here?
Yes, I'm one of the founding members of the Sharia Free America Caucus. And we've been discussing this internally because a lot of my colleagues are confronted with this on a large scale directly in their states. So far, we have not been at least largely impacted in Idaho, but my colleagues in Texas, Minnesota, New Jersey, they're confronted with it in a very significant way. And Sharia law is something that is not compatible with American rule of law. It's not compatible with Western values. It's not compatible with the Constitution. And so we were trying to discuss, okay, how do we fight this at the federal level? And the answer we came up with was, well, we've got to make it an ongoing effort. Let's create a caucus. Let's dedicate that caucus to the awareness of what this is, because a lot of people still don't know, and how detrimental it is to the American way of life, and how in opposition it is to American law. You know, the examples were many, but just a couple that pop out. If you adhere to Sharia law, then homosexuality is a death penalty. I mean, you can award a death penalty. If you're under Sharia law and you're female, you basically have no rights. Similar to literally an animal. I mean, how the husband or the male has complete domination legally with any type of punishment or renderings there. It's totally incompatible with the American rule of law, Western values. And this was confronted with me when I was in the state Senate years ago. And I didn't act on it then. And it's because I didn't know what it was. We hadn't seen any specific examples of it, and I didn't understand how it was implemented. But what happens is the people that adhere to that will coalesce in a certain region of a state or a country, and then they will just dispel the American rule of law and they will replace it with their own. And so they'll govern themselves with that. Well, that can't happen within America's borders and be consistent with the value system here. And so I didn't see it years ago when I was in the state legislature. I definitely see it now. And we're trying to act in opposition to it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you're going to have a lot of support from Idaho. I think there's 2 bills running in the legislature right now trying to deal with that issue. So it's very important. And I'm glad you're doing that.
To get to it early, because now that it's in place in other states, they have a harder challenge. And so it's really important to get this early.
Yeah, great point. One of the things that Idaho does very well, and you know this when you were part of the legislature here, is, one bill, one subject. Let's not create hundreds of pages of new statutes and codes that deal with so many various things. Is that really possible at the federal level? And because I know it's something that you're trying to champion here.
Well, let's put it this way. It's been the first bill I've launched every single year that I've been a member of Congress, and that's 8 times now. But the reality is, Matt, every major piece of legislation is really a weighing of the good versus the bad, because it's not one subject. They'll put defense in the same bill as transportation, is the same bill as tax policy, is the same bill as healthcare, whatever. All of it is thrown into a 1,000+ page bill. And then you simply have to weigh the good with the bad, because there's always going to be good, there's always going to be bad. And to me, that's not a good way to govern. And that's how it's done here. And Idaho is very wise that the subject matter needs to be germane to a subject. That's what we need to do here. And is it possible? In the short term, I would have to say no. However, every single time that I launch this effort, it gets more airtime each time. And so, maybe at one point in time, we'll get enough inertia, and some people will get disgusted enough with the existing process to get it done. But we just passed a great big budget bill, for example. And I struggled on the vote because there was some really good things that needed to happen in that budget bill. But there was some bad stuff too. And then you got to go home and you explain, why did I support that? Well, in order to get that, I had to get this. And it's just a bad way to govern. And so we're going to keep championing the one subject at a time bill.
Yeah, that's great to hear. All right, I know you got to run, but any parting words to the legislature and the folks here who are trying to doge the states, considering doge seems to have fallen by the way, the spirit of it at least has fallen by the wayside where you're at. Any words of encouragement back here in the state?
It's had a huge impact, and it still is. And I forget the number of DOJ recommendations that have been codified in law back here, but it's a significant number. And it was a cultural shift, and you have to go through a cultural shift in how you think about things every now and then. You have to be a change agent. You have to insert yourself into the process, rethink it, relook at it from a different angle, have someone that maybe is not engaged with it every day to look at it and look for those misuse, look for the fraud, look for the inefficiency. That was a healthy exercise here. It is ongoing. But I would recommend that anywhere. That needs to happen in business. It typically does happen in business. It needs to happen in government. I encourage my friends back home to do the same thing at home. This is going to do nothing but yield positive things.
Excellent. All right. Well, Congressman Fulcher, where can people follow you and keep track of your work?
Fulcher.house.gov. And we try to make that as informative as we possibly can. And we encourage communication. All of our friends back in Idaho are my bosses in Idaho. We need your counsel. We need your comments. We need your wisdom. So thank you.
Amen to that. All right, Congressman. Godspeed to you. We'll check in with you later. Take care.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks. And we again thank Congressman Fulcher for taking time out to join us here on this little program that all we just focus on is the state. But there he is. Hoping to fight the good fight up there. So a lot of good, important points there. I believe we have Brian Allman available. Brian, good to see you this morning. It was nice to hear from Congressman Fulcher on a few topics that are actually currently really important to Idaho right now.
Sure. It's a reminder that we're fighting similar battles at the state level and the national level. For most of us, the national level is out of reach. We can't really affect it. We send hopefully good people to the Congress to do some good work, send some, people out there who are in the staffs, in the executive branch, we got Alex Adams and Wendy Horman out there working for us now. But really, it's also a reminder that why we need to focus at the state level stuff. Because that's where we can make a difference. We can make these things happen often in a much faster and quicker way than they can at the national level. But good to hear that Congressman Fulcher is working on those same issues. And I do appreciate that he takes the time to talk to folks like you, because that's how you have to stay in touch with your actual voters, with the constituents of the state of Idaho. Idaho's a long way from Washington, D.C., so I'm sure when he's out there, it can feel like it's very far away. So, they have to be able to do that, to come back and hear what people are actually talking about, what people care about.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, we thank him for that. Very good. And speaking of the distance between things, Idaho itself has quite a trek to get from one point to the other, whether you're going east to west or north to south or northwest to southeast. It's quite a trek, and it can feel very different sometimes. And we just had a vote in the while we were watching the interview with Russ Fulcher, a very anticlimactic vote here, and debate. This is House Joint Resolution 7, folks. This was the Blaine Amendment. We were going to carry this whole thing live, but it happened so quickly. Representative Elaine Price stood up. She delivered her opening remarks. I believe there was one comment or something in support, perhaps, and then they voted, and it was all done within a matter of minutes. And as you can see, you would think that HJR 7 passed, but this is a House Joint Resolution to put the repeal of the Blaine Amendment on the ballot in November, and that requires 47 votes. That requires 2/3 of the House to put this on the ballot. So with only 41, 6 votes shy, the Blaine Amendment will not appear on the November ballot.
It's a high threshold to put a ballot question regarding a constitutional amendment out there, and that's probably a good thing. But it is a little frustrating to see something that you and I, we look at this and it's obvious. This is contrary to the free exercise clause of the U.S. Constitution, and that's just not our opinion. That's the Supreme Court's opinion. It's a relic of a very different time, as I said in my testimony, and yet they couldn't quite convince enough people to get on board. What I find interesting about this vote board here, this looks to me like the breakdown of the House. With a few, exceptions, there always are. The folks in green are generally I would say are generally conservative, agree with us on a lot of issues. The folks in red, whether they're moderate Republicans or Democrats, are, perhaps a little more progressive, a little more to the left. I think if we broke it down further, we'd also see maybe some regional differences. I know during the committee hearing, some of the Eastern Idaho representatives were very skeptical of the idea of repealing the Blaine Amendment. They feared that a legislature could come to power and then just start handing out goodies to sectarian organizations. I don't know how, ingenuous that was, but that was some of their concerns.
Yeah, and we can't control the calendar in the House and such, but we just a little inside baseball for you folks out there. We sent out an email to all 105 of those people right there, all 105 legislators, inviting them to a meeting with attorney Catherine Hartley from the Pacific Justice Institute, a Zoom meeting, in order to ask her questions, because right now she is the most recent and probably the only lawyer in the state to have taken a Blaine Amendment case to the federal court and won. And she has a number of those cases on her in her file right now that she's working on dealing with the Blaine Amendment. And so we invited every single one of them to come to a Zoom meeting that was supposed to happen tonight, and I guess it's not happening tonight. But again, this thing passed committee last week. It's been on the third reading calendar, and tonight was the earliest that we could try and schedule this thing to make sure people would show up at. But apparently, these folks were less interested. I mean, look, like I said, they don't control the calendar. I don't control the calendar. But unfortunately, we're going to have to still do some more education. In fact, we might still have it anyway. And if these folks want to come up and figure out why they voted no, but we'll probably have to reschedule it in the off season and just do a little more educating. I mean, this is the hardest thing about this bill here, and this amendment, Brian, is the fact that it's so easy for people to just say, "Oh, you want to get rid of this so that the state can pay for religious schools," which is not what's going on here.
Right. And the problem with this, with having this piece of text in our Constitution still after the Supreme Court has struck it down, is what happens if we get another case? What if somebody sues the state government in federal court over this? Is the state, the Attorney General's office, going to have to defend something that is basically a dead letter at this point? And then the federal government, the Supreme Court, will strike it down just like it has in all these other states. And it's going to be a waste of time and money to defend the indefensible.
Yep, I agree, of course. All right, well, that's the fate of that. Moving on, another fight. We'll keep going, folks. That's okay. Some of these battles are long. I mean, it hasn't gotten this far. It hasn't gotten to the House floor, I believe. This is the first time I believe it's hit the House floor for a vote. So this is just one more step. One other piece of legislation that we've been following for the last 3 years, folks. We've been following the journey of a citizen and a couple of citizens who had an issue, and they have been whipping votes. They have been helping to bring bills and try to lobby for something. And it's been fascinating to watch their journey, because they're still on it right now, this bill. And I'm teasing it a little bit because I want to take a break and we'll come back and get through it. But so why don't we do that? The House is still currently in session. I don't know if the Senate is, but we'll keep tabs on some of the other important bills that come up. But we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Coming from within the system, which the process in the system is broken.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among the world's silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
My name is Jordan Redmond, representing District 3 in Kootenai County. I will declare a Rule 80, as I do have rental properties that participate as short-term rentals. House Bill 583 is legislation brought forth to clarify and strengthen protections for short-term rentals across our state. This bill ensures that property owners can utilize their homes for temporary lodging without undue regulation and burdens from local jurisdictions. This legislation amends Idaho Code and prevents counties and cities from enacting ordinances that effectively prohibit short-term rentals while allowing reasonable regulations focused solely on public health, safety, and welfare. Many cities in our state have unfortunately been interrupting Idaho Code by way of allowing them to excessively regulate and require undue regulation for homeowners who choose to rent their properties or outright forbidding them from the rental market. Many Idahoans depend on this supplemental income they receive from renting their homes, and they believe that they should be protected from private property rights. This bill also affirms short-term rentals remain subject to general ordinances applicable for all residential properties, including governing noise, parking, nuisances, curfews, traffic, etc. This measure strikes a balance between fostering economic opportunity for Idahoans, particularly in the tourist-dependent communities, while maintaining neighborhood integrity. This has been a bill that's been worked on for several years, and I do believe this strikes a good balance. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Max Pond could pop up and walk through the bill with the committee.
Okay, we'll skip Max Pond for now, but that is the short-term rental rights, property rights bill that has been trying to get through the legislature for the last few years. And this is that bill I was teasing because it's so fascinating to watch these two folks, and we've had them on the program, or at least one of them, Melissa Radford and Jeremy Radford, who own short-term rentals. But I don't want to set it up too much here, Brian. But let's listen to the real-world example of the issues that that short-term rental owners go through, and we'll listen to Melissa's testimony here.
And make your portion of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the House Business Committee. My name is Melissa Radford. My husband, Jeremy, and I live in Coeur d'Alene. I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner, and my husband is a general contractor. We moved here from Oregon specifically because of Idaho's strong commitment to the Constitution, individual rights, and welcoming communities. We purchased an old neglected house near downtown Coeur d'Alene and spent 2 years renovating it. It is now a beautiful home that we enjoy sharing with visitors. We decorate our home at Christmas time. We keep it clean, safe, and attractive year-round for our neighbors and guests. We love our neighbors and improve our neighborhood by making it look better than we found it and improving the aesthetics and property values of the area. We also provide an option for visitors to Coeur d'Alene who want to stay in a home, not a hotel room. Instead of the Idaho we expected, we've seen city leaders turn our inherent property rights into revocable government favors, privileges to be granted or stripped away at their whim. They weaponize regulations against vacation rental hosts like us, branding us as threats and invaders, not as neighbors who contribute to the economy. They use inflammatory, dehumanizing rhetoric to justify burdensome, unconstitutional rules and punitive taxes. We've heard heartbreaking stories from hosts across Idaho, from Island Park to McCall to Sandpoint to Lava Hot Springs, being scapegoated for failed housing policies, facing de facto bans that crush the American dream and our love of sharing our beautiful state with visitors. In Coeur d'Alene, a city leader openly called us invaders. Since 2023, the city has hired an out-of-state agency for 24/7 surveillance and a complaint hotline, turning neighbors into spies and treating us like perpetual suspects, presumed guilty without evidence. Yet real data shows disturbance rates around 1%. Claims of widespread problems are conjecture, not fact. Vague terms in the current state law, like health and safety and neighborhood integrity, are being manipulated to suspend our rights with no limiting principle. We've tried rational discussion at City Council statewide, only to face ordinance after ordinance that ignores equal protection, due process, and protection against warrantless searches. Homeowners have spent tens to hundreds of thousands on lawyers and lawsuits, but it's whack-a-mole. Strike down one unconstitutional regulation and 10 more appear. Even after the Idaho Supreme Court unanimously struck down Lava Hot Springs' selective bans last year in May, many cities have doubled down, defying the ruling and choosing lawfare over the law. They have proven they will not self-correct. I would not be standing here 3 years in a row if this wasn't an existential crisis, a violation of rights that only you can remedy. Please help pass House Bill 583, enact clear, unambiguous language that defends our fundamental property rights. We have the opportunity to make Idaho the first state in the nation to declare that the right to rent is not subject to the whims and biases of the loudest voices in City Hall, to make it unmistakable that cities and counties cannot violate property rights in the name of local control. Thank you for standing up for the principles that make Idaho great. Please support House Bill 583.
Now, Brian, I know when you're out there at the Capitol, you probably have run into Melissa and Jeremy at one point. And again, this story is so great because they're just you and me, and they've just been working hard trying to make things right.
Yeah. And that shows the value of perseverance. You come in there, and a lot of times good legislation takes years to actually get through on all sorts of issues. The school choice issue took many years and a lot of work by a lot of people to get to the point where it passed, and other things as well. So it's heartening to see that this is finally going through. I'm looking at the statement of purpose on the bill. They've got Speaker Moyle and Pro Tem Kelly Anthon as co-sponsors at this point. So I think that's a good indication that leadership is behind this. They want it to go through, which again shows the value of perseverance. You talk to people, you persuade, you convince, and then you get them on board with your issue instead of just, it's all too easy nowadays to just complain online. You post on Twitter or on Facebook and talk about how terrible this issue, the response was, and how you just need to vote everybody out, or voting's not going to help anything. Well, it just really, you got to put in the work, and Melissa and Jeremy have really done that.
Yeah, they have, and we look forward to having them on the show to talk more through this, because the bill did pass committee. It was a long hearing. It was about an hour and a half long. We've isolated it and uploaded that hearing to our YouTube and Rumble channels. So if you want to watch the entire debate on this, because there is some debate. I mean, there are plenty of folks that and not just the city folks that still want all this control, but just everyday average folks who maybe live next to an Airbnb, or they live next to somebody who's doing a short-term rental, and they seem to want to place all the blame on disturbance in the neighborhood on short-term rentals. And people can have bad neighbors for 25 years and on one side and have perfectly fine, silent short-term renters on the other side. So it all goes both ways. But to lay the blame of all the ills of a neighborhood on a short-term rental, I think is short-sighted. So please go check out that hearing. And we'll. You got a final word on that, Brian?
I was just thinking how this is really part of a longer, much bigger discussion on the balancing property rights with community standards, HOA sort of things. Senator Tammy Nichols has been trying to get her chicken bill through to say that people in suburbs or in cities can have a couple of chickens in their backyard so long as they have enough space and there's no nuisance. And that's really where the debate is, because some communities want to ban that because they don't like the second order effects, the squawking or the smell or something. But and just like with this short-term rental, it's not that people, I think, don't like renters in specifically, or short-term rentals like Airbnbs. It's that they don't like those second-order effects that we hear about, loud parties or making messes or lots of cars in the driveway. Which those are things that I think communities can handle without necessarily banning everything and ruining it for everybody.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, I'm not sure if we'll see the chicken bill again this year, but we'll look out for it. But speaking of Tammy Nichols, Senator Tammy Nichols, she was in committee yesterday with a cloud seeding bill, and she referenced that it was very similar to last year's bill. But let's listen to the presentation here.
Committee. For the record, I'm Senator Tammy Nichols, and I represent District 10, Middleton, North Nampa, and Star area. And I am introducing RS 33154. Mr. Chairman and Committee, water is critical to the state of Idaho, supporting our communities, agriculture, industry, and the way of life. Because water reliability is so important, it is equally important that any tools used to manage water resources are transparent, accountable, and understood by the public. This bill might look familiar to you. This legislation was brought last session, and the Senate passed that bill, but ultimately it stalled in the House. But this version builds on that work. It is similar in structure, but improved and reflects additional collaboration and refinements since last session. This bill updates Idaho's cloud seeding statute by placing clear definitions, authorizations, and reporting mechanisms into law to improve transparency and accountability around our existing cloud seeding program. Since last session, I've worked with and incorporated input from Idaho citizens as well as from several partners that are involved in the state in the cloud seeding operations and water management. That input helped to clarify definitions, strengthen reporting provisions, and improve public transparency while maintaining continuity within the existing program. This bill does not create a new program, it does not expand a program, and it has no fiscal impact. It simply ensures that when we are using cloud seeding in the state of Idaho, it is done transparently and with public accountability like so many other programs in our state. Federal oversight of cloud seeding is very limited and largely informational, and so it's appropriate for states to establish their own transparency and accountability standards. Again, this was worked on in conjunction with multiple individuals. I worked with the Idaho Water Users Association on here. Idaho Power had eyes on it, and then I got input back from many constituents and other citizens in the state. And so I guess with that, Mr. Chairman and Committee, I respectfully ask the committee to print this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Brian, this is, this is good to see. We need to have transparency in these situations. I'd also like to know exactly what it looks like in the sky when they are doing cloud seeding, so we know. What when people look up in the sky and they see something go by is that cloud seeding? Like, show us what it looks like. I'm looking for that. I also know that there's I won't say a competing bill, but like a partner bill that is also going to say, hey, maybe we should put a moratorium on this so we can find out exactly what is going on. So it's good to have the transparency in line here if we need to continue going forward. And then it's also good to figure out what the heck is going on. Your take on any of this?
I generally agree. Transparency is good. The cloud seeding programs have been going on for quite a while. There's a company out there called Rainmaker that's been making a lot of news lately. Within the cloud seeding space, it's an interesting technology. This issue gets very, very heated. I think people get very passionate about it, and I think there's a lot of truth mixed in with a lot of maybe more fantastical explanations for what's going on. And it's hard to separate that at times when you're reading the online discourse. So I think this bill is a good step. Let's see exactly what we're doing and exactly how it's working out, what the process is, and then we can go from there and make decisions based on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we need to have the transparency on this, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, why has this thing stalled out? I remember covering this bill last year and just kind of wondering what happened. I mean, it went through the Senate, and then maybe they just didn't have time in the House. I mean, this is one of those things where it's like, are there too many bills that get run through? But at the same time, they obviously don't get to all of them. So what's the point here? Who's going to create that queue line? Okay, well. I think there's there's definitely something to this, because I mean, there's too many things going on and too many things being unveiled in other parts of our government about what's and also whether it's the medical field, the FDA, how they treat our food, what they do to the water, all of this stuff. There's so many suspected things, especially coming out of COVID and understanding what they've done there, that you kind of just don't trust anybody, and I don't blame people. So at the very least, let's get some transparency. I'm with you on that. All right. One other clip to show here, or at least one, is from yesterday. Is Senator Todd Lakey presented a bill that seemed almost a little benign in nature until he started explaining some of the examples of how this bill could be used when if it's passed. So we'll watch some of this. If he belabors it, we might have to speed it up a little bit here. But we tried to I tried to find something. All right, none of that. Just roll it.
Senate Bill 1251 deals with the legal authority of the Attorney General of the state of Idaho. And I will say that I've worked with the Attorney General's office on this issue and this language. And senators, as you know, the Attorney General is the attorney for the state of Idaho. They represent the state in various legal actions. And Idaho Code 67-1401-11 notes the common law power or authority of the Attorney General. It doesn't delve into that specifically, which requires then that that statute be interpreted as you look at case law to define what the common law power is of the office of the Attorney General. This clarifies that there is statutory power in addition to that common law power, or I guess more accurately says the common law power includes the statutory authority for the Attorney General to represent the state of Idaho and enforce the laws that we pass as legislators in the civil context. It makes it clear that the AG has the power to enforce state law by going to the court to either obtain a declaratory action or declaratory relief or an injunction. Senators, sometimes we pass laws that don't specifically say that the Attorney General shall enforce this law or provide a methodology for the Attorney General to do that. This covers those bases where there isn't a specific enforcement mechanism put in the code. Again, which I think is somewhat common as I think about things over the years. But it does not provide the ultimate authority to the Attorney General. They have to apply to the court. And the court makes the decision whether to grant the declaratory action to say this is what the statute means and the context of the circumstances, and then issue an order or issue an injunction, again, interpreting the code and saying this is what it means and your activity is in violation of the state code, therefore stop. Just some examples. I asked the Attorney General office to give me some examples. So I didn't have to spend a lot of time looking up the various code sections that exist, but one example is Idaho Code 67-25-12. It requires state agencies, commissions, and bureaus that have a website to post their administrative rules and their policies on their website. But there's no enforcement mechanism listed in the code in that regard. So this would be something if you have a particular agency or bureau that says, I'm not going to post those on my website, the Attorney General could encourage them to do that. And if they simply refuse, there's an enforcement opportunity in court. Idaho Code 18-217 requires inmate mental health records to be provided to mental health professionals from other state and local agencies that may be working with that individual, either in a probationary or a treatment context. But there's no enforcement mechanism if they fail to do that. That's an example again. Then we have the recent examples in 67-2303 and 33-143, which concern the display of flags at public facilities, at government facilities. No specific enforcement mechanism listed in those statutes. So, senators, it's important to make sure it's clear that the AG has statutory authority for civil enforcement of state law in our courts. This isn't specific to any code section.
Okay, I think we got the gist of it there, Brian. Yeah, you just commented it's the fix everything bill. I mean, it kind of feels like it is. It's like the big problem that that they ran into, specifically even with this flag bill, was there was like the Attorney General. I think he said he couldn't really do anything. Is that right?
Well, I don't remember specifically what the AG might have said about the flag bill. As Senator Lakey pointed out, the bills like that don't necessarily include an enforcement provision. And I've talked to lawmakers over the last year, and some of them are have expressed their frustration. You mean we have to put in a specific enforcement of every bill?
Right.
And you'd think that would be assumed that once the law is the law, then everybody has to follow the law. And so this bill just makes that explicit. We're looking at that flag bill, and there's two different approaches now to fix it, to make it so it can be enforced. You had Representative Hill yesterday in a long hearing with that new flag bill that puts in specific enforcement mechanisms. It says specifically in that bill, in addition to the $2,000 per flag per day fine, that it's the Attorney General can file for injunctive relief in the courts. Well, this bill just says, well, if there's a law and it's not being followed, then the Attorney General can go to the courts and get a court to say you have to follow it, which it seems like, it goes without saying, but apparently it needs to be said.
Well, I'll tell you why it needs to be said, Brian, is because we are losing our republic. We have a massively growing set of people in this country that do not respect the rule of law. They simply don't respect it. You've got all of these folks out there saying ICE out of the city, right? I get ICE out of here. No, you cannot enforce your federal immigration laws in our city. I'm sorry. I mean, that's lawlessness. You can't have lawlessness. That is the law. You don't like it, then change it. They keep telling you, well, if you don't like the flag up there, go to the polls and vote. Oh, really? How does that work out for you when you're changing the rules about voting too, right? You go around redistricting states. Yo, we're gonna move all of the districts over here so that way we can gerrymander and get more people in the House, more Democrats in the House, and then the Republicans do the same thing. I mean, it's all a shell game. It just feels like you're just constantly being screwed because under every shell is the nut is gone, and we're losing our republic every single time. And so yes, we do need something like this, because if you're an agency and you're told to put up papers, be transparent with the public, and you're like, we're not going to do that here, or we're not going to do that unless you give us 10 more employees, or you give us raises, or you give us this. It's like, who's in charge here? Who's in charge here? Too many representatives, too many senators head down to Boise and think that they got hired by the governor, or they got hired by a certain agency, or they're working for the lobbyists. No, you work for the people. You work for us. And too many people go down there and they lose sight of that, and they just do whatever the agencies tell them to. It ends. It absolutely ends. And so if he needs to write something like this to put into law, so that way an attorney general that actually has balls of steel can go out there and say, I'm going to take care of this, then do it. Then do it. Get it done. I don't care. Get this stuff done. Sorry, Brian, but I'm just I'm fed up with the lack of action.
Maybe this bill will make everybody think a little bit twice about trying to defy the law. Earlier in this session, I remember during a presentation to JFAC where staffers were reminding the co-chairs of JFAC that they actually have subpoena power. If they request information from a state agency, an executive branch agency, and they refuse to provide it, they can actually file a subpoena to get that information, and the courts will force them to give it over. And even just the mere threat of that will probably make them play a little nicer. And I think that can happen here. Just the mere threat that the Attorney General can go to the court and make you, compel you to follow the law. Perhaps they'll choose not to fight that battle this time.
Yeah, I'm glad that folks were reminded of that. We'll see if that ever takes place. One thing I do notice that I haven't seen in recent years, that I've noticed a lot more this year, is when these folks from these agencies are standing in front of JFAC, or they're standing in front of a committee, and these legislators, because they're hearing it from the people, they're pushing back, and they're saying, why are you doing this, or what happened to that? I saw some clips from Senator Lenny, Senator Zeiderveld. We've seen Representative Kyle Harris. I mean, we can name names all day long on the folks that are looking at the heads of these agencies, or these budget analysts and so forth, and saying, whoa, hold the phone here. What are you doing, and why do you need to do that? Because this is not kosher right now. So I'm enjoying watching some of these things happen in these committees. There's some B-roll now of some of that stuff going on. All right. Well, last thing I want to bring up here, because we get calls about it. I've had phone calls. I've had conversations about it. And so we're going to do a dramatic shift here. There's two bills. There's two House concurrent resolutions, 23 and 25, Brian, and they deal with a convention of states. They deal with having the legislature make a formal statement to the Congress saying we want to convene an Article 5 convention of the states. And again, there's two different bills, HCR 23 and HCR 25. And HCR 23 says we want to convene a convention of the states in order to set term limits for congressmen and senators, representatives and senators in Congress. That's number 23. Number 25 says we want a convention of states and limit it to proposing an amendment to have a balanced budget at the federal level. You're familiar with these, yes, Brian?
Yes, I'm pretty familiar.
Okay.
Oh, go on.
My question is, how can we have two resolutions calling for a convention of states where each resolution says it's going to be limited to one topic and both topics are different from each other?
You're hitting at my biggest concern with the idea of the convention. I've written numerous times about it over at Gem State Chronicle, my opposition to the idea, and I get a lot of pushback because this issue gets very passionate on both sides. Both sides point to the people on the other side and say, you're destroying the Constitution, you're destroying the country. People get very passionate about this. And there's a lot of money involved too, which always complicates things. But yeah, you've kind of hit on my concern is the proponents of the convention, they have an idea of how it would play out. But I don't think anybody really knows. I've got my phone here with my Constitution app. Article 5, it talks about how you amend the Constitution. Now, there's the one way, which we've done every other time, which is where the Congress passes with a 2/3 majority, just like here in the state, a proposed amendment. And then it goes to the states, and the states have to ratify it. 3/4 of the states have to ratify it. So it's a very high bar, as it should be. And it's, but it has an alternate method for amending. It says, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments. And that's it. That's the entirety of the Convention of States clause in Article 5, which means we don't actually know how it would happen. If we reach that 2/3 threshold to call for a convention, Congress actually sets the parameters of the convention. Now, they can look at the applications and say, okay, well, we're going to set the parameters according to this way, but they might not. We don't even know how many delegates we'd have. Would it be one delegate per state, or each state have one vote at the convention, or would it be based on proportion? Would it be more like the Electoral College, where California would have 54 and Idaho would only have 4? Again, we don't know. And there's all sorts of competing legal theories about how it might go down, but until it actually happens, we just don't know. So it strikes me as kind of contradictory that they've got two resolutions and each one says, well, it's going to be limited to this one issue. So if we get the two resolutions and they both pass, will we assume that Congress will call a convention to propose amendments regarding term limits and a balanced budget? Or depending on how many other states have passed which of the two, is it only going to be limited to one? Or will they just call a convention and no matter what the resolutions at the state level said, will they just start proposing whatever amendments the delegates feel like? We just don't know.
Yeah, well, I err more on the side of I like the idea. I like the idea that we would have this because Congress isn't going to do these things on their own, and I like the idea that the states have this power. And but you got to do it. You got to do it the right way. And I don't see how having two resolutions that limit yourself to one topic and they're both running through. I don't see how you square having both of them unless you're just saying, well, let's just have so many and we'll see which one gets through. And then what? Well, because you've limited yourself to one topic. So which topic takes precedent, the term limits or the balanced budget? And then I'm sure among those people, they're probably fighting out both. And then I know that there's probably a group out there that's going, well, we want to limit it to just two topics. So this is the issue with this. And I'm sorry, but I love the idea of a constitutional convention. It's in our federal constitution, and I think it is a mechanism that should be explored and should be and eventually utilized. But folks, you got to square this away for me. You got two things going on here, and I'm just God bless them, but we got to figure this out. So,
one interesting thing is that there are multiple organizations.
Yeah, final point.
Convention of States Action. I think they're just pushing for I think they have 3 issues. Balanced budget now is just solely focused on the balanced budget, and then there's USA term limits, or however that organization is called, that's just focused on the term limits. And so they're all working in the same space. But what was really interesting is that in the committee hearing on HCR 25, proponents of the bill said that it's not actually meant to call a convention. They're not actually intending to call a convention. They just want to get to the 33 state threshold, which is one short of the 2/3 required. And then that, in their theory, will force Congress to then propose a balanced budget amendment itself. So it comes across almost as a bluff, which maybe explains why they're doing it this way. But I don't know. To me, it's an unpredictable bluff.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there for now. Like I said, I've gotten people reaching out to me, and so we'll have some of their folks on to do counter arguments and arguments this way and that way, and try to come to a consensus, because we got to do something, because we know Congress isn't going to do it, so it's going to be up to the people. All right, Brian, good to see you, my friend. We will check back in with you tomorrow. Just let everybody know where they can follow you.
At Brian Ullman on X, gemstatechronicle.com. I'm working on an article looking at some of the stuff that was discussed earlier this week and last week. So yeah, stay tuned.
Fantastic. All right, folks, say goodbye to Brian. Let's get out of here, man. We started a little bit late, but we'll try and end on time. There is a call-in number, 402-4915 in the great 208. That's 402-4915. Leave your voicemail. We'll play it on the air. There's also, we hit the 6,000 mark over at YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you. And the shorts are blowing up. IdahoSignal.live. You can listen to the show rebroadcast on a loop until the next live show is over there. And if you're into smoked salts, AmericanSmokeCo.com. You get some smoked salts to smoke your meat, throw in your veggies, and your morning eggs, which is what I do. Oh my goodness, the Democrats announced their Quixote speaker, Tim Walz. Tim Walz is coming to Idaho, folks. Boy, that's going to be fun. Oh, man, that's great. He's looking good these days, no? And remember to check out to see who signed the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge. Right now we have 42 conservative legislators have signed, but we're going to highlight District 31 here, because all 3 of these guys have refused to sign the pledge. Head over to idahopledge.com to learn more all about it. We'll see you tomorrow.
A stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.